Hi, this is Pamela Riemenschneider for Blue Book Services. I have Greg Johnson, our Director of Media Development here. And Greg, you've been out of the office for the week. Where have you been?
That's right. I've been in Washington State visiting with apple, pear, and cherry shippers, and I'm excited to say that I will have a report on the cherry crop in the next week or so. I'm going to give them a little bit more time. They say basically it changed over from winter to warm. I mean, it was 80 degrees all the days that I was there, and so it kind of skipped spring, and so they thought they would be way far behind in Washington State delay, and now it's moving up really quickly, and they're concerned it might compress the season a little, but it looks like a great crop. So check back in a few weeks or a week.
All right.
And you've done a lot of stories this week on food trends, and I know the United one, the FreshFacts that came out, showed some pretty interesting angles on it.
Definitely. And what I really appreciated, and I let United Fresh know this, and if you haven't caught it, they had a webinar this time around with Matt Lally from Nielsen and Topps Friendly Markets Director of Produce, Jeff Cady, to add color to this quarterly report that they put out, the Fresh Facts on Retail. So we had an hour to discuss all of these numbers that we saw. There were some really big shockers that you don't actually see in the print report or the digital report, like fresh pears, for example. Sales were up 22% in the first quarter. Hadn't heard that before. And then also one thing that really I think surprised a lot of people who were on the call was that cauliflower sales were down in the first quarter of 2019. And with all that's going on with cauliflower, that kind of seems like it would be unexpected for a lot of people, because it ties in so nicely to all these diet trends. And the first quarter of the year is always talking about eating better, January 1st, restarting your diet. But it turns out cauliflower sales for fresh cauliflower were down, but frozen was actually up like 16%, I think. So it's kind of following some of these trends of what's going on with innovation in the freezer aisle.
And then you found out some interesting info on specialty diets this week. I found that really good. Can you expand on that?
Sure, yeah. One thing that Matt from Nielsen said was that nearly or more than a third of people in the US, 37%, report being on some kind of diet, whether that's paleo or Weight Watchers or keto. And keto is the one that I think it kind of is, everyone talks about it, but not everyone's on it. But actually, he said 6% of the people in the US report that they're on a ketogenic diet. And it's actually having some kind of an effect on fruit sales. It's a really strong correlation. When you see ketogenic is something where it's almost exactly the same thing as Atkins, really, if you can remember it from the late 90s, early 2000s, when everyone was eating all that bacon. So, ketogenic diets, you have to avoid high carb foods. And according to them, they don't want you to eat a whole lot of different kinds of fruits, except raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, and avocados. They count, avocado as a fruit. Those are all keto friendly, and coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, they're the fruits that are actually showing a really strong trend line up in sales instead of flat or down. So that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, that 6% number is amazing to me, because what we hear on vegan and vegetarian, usually we hear around 3% of people are vegetarian and about 1 to 2% are vegan. So that would mean this keto group would be 2 to 3 times these other two groups that we hear so much about.
Well, you can have bacon when you're keto. You can have bacon when you're vegan, unless it's one of that eggplant bacon, which I tried. It's not good.
It's not the same thing.
More sense to me. Another really hot topic with our readers in the Produce Reporter newsletter this week was trade, specifically trade with Mexico and the end of the tomato suspension agreement. We were all in suspense, pun intended, about what was going to happen, and it happened. So what now? What do we do now?
Well, that's a good question. There is a duty, a 17% duty, but it could take a couple weeks until we see the product that's being bought from Mexico actually end up at the retail level. I mean, it was already in the pipeline at this point. And when I talked to FPAA CEO Lance Youngmeyer this week, he said the investigation could show dumping, it could not show dumping. This 17%, the Department of Commerce and International Trade Commission could rule that it would go up, it could go down, it could totally wipe it out. If there's no dumping, then the investigation would show that there'd be no duties. So we still don't know what's going to happen from here.
Yeah, and we have another story that's coming out from Marco Campos, our international writer, and he says that this trade talk with Mexico and the disputes over tomatoes are actually making people a little nervous that blueberries could be next. So I looked into blueberry numbers, and actually, if you pay attention to the blueberry industry in Mexico, and 90% of that goes to the U.S. Marco says that his contacts told him that they're looking to diversify their markets because they know they can't rely on the U.S. But one of the bigger stories that we had this week was from a study from the University of Georgia talking about the economic impact of the USMCA agreement, the replacement for NAFTA. If that isn't amended, the Georgia fresh produce industry is very concerned about the economic impact. They're saying it could be catastrophic for their growers if we don't see some protections for growers in the U.S. Well, that's it for this week's Produce Reporter Newsletter Week in Review. If you're not getting the Produce Reporter daily newsletter in your inbox, go to producebluebook.com and sign up.